David?
To order. Calling meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted in person in the board's conference room at the board's office on the 15th floor of Trinidad Center. Pursuant to section 21-1503 of the Philadelphia Code, electronic recordings of this meeting will be made through Microsoft Teams, conference technology, and by an audio recording. Electronic recording will be made available to the public online at the board's website without charge within 10 days. Please note that you consent to such recording by attending, participating, or speaking at such meeting. All right, first agenda item is a motion to adopt the rules. Seconded? And then I go through the, right, so Brian?
I approve.
Rashida? Andrea? Approved. Paul?
Approved.
Marcia? Approved. Carol?
Approved.
Willie?
Approved.
And Tara. Second agenda item is the motion to approve the minutes from the December 12th, 2024 board meeting. So moved and seconded. Yes, correct. Brian?
I approve.
Rashida? Andrea? Approved. Paul?
Approved.
Marcia? Carol?
Approved.
Willie?
Approved.
And Tara. Motion passes 8-0. Magic words. Next item up on the agenda is a motion to consider the 229 pension applications and the 147 withdrawal applications. Motion and seconded. Brian?
I approve.
Rashida? Andrea? Approved. Paul?
Approved.
Marcia?
Approved.
Carol? Willie?
Approved.
Tara? 8-0, motion carries. And then we start actually doing. Motion to consider the case of Thomas. No.
Go ahead.
Right. Hold on 1 second.
All righty. Back to the next.
Okay. Motion to consider case 4A for Ron C. Anderson. Motion and second. Brian?
Denied.
Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Denied.
Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
Kara? And Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 8-8. 0-8. Motion to consider case 4A for Willie Brown. Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Sorry. Motion to consider the case 4B for Willie Brown. Any discussion? None. Brian?
Denied.
Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
No.
Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
Sarah? And Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 8-0. Motion to consider case 4C for Thomas Dixon. Any discussion? The motion to approve. That's fine. A motion to approve. Brian? Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Denied.
Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
Adam? Tara? And Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 8-0. Motion to consider case 4D for Edward Kaiser. Any discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Denied.
Rashida? Marcia,
Denied.
Paul,
Denied.
Andrea, Willie,
Denied.
Sarah, and Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 8-0. Motion to consider case 4E for Jessica King. Discussion.
I'd like to make a motion to put this in.
I'll second that. Okay, so Brian? Will you-
For the hearing time? Aye.
Rashida? Marcia?
For the hearing panel?
Yes.
Oh, I approve.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Willie?
Approved.
Sarah?
I abstain due to personal.
And Carol?
Approved.
Right. Motion carried 6-6 with 1 denial and 1 abstention.
Aye.
Moving to the next one, motion to consider case 4F for Antoine Acosta. Any discussion? Hearing none. Motion to approve. Brian? Denied. Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Denied.
Andrea? Lily?
Denied.
Sarah? And Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 8-0. Motion to consider case 4G for Anthony Barbera. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Approved.
Rashida? Marcia?
Approved.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Approved. Lily?
Approved.
Sarah? Approved. Carol?
Approved.
Motion carries with 7 approvals and 1 denial. Motion to consider case 4H for William Emery. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Denied.
Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul? Andrea? Lily?
Denied.
Sarah? And Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 8-0. Motion to consider case 4I for Paul Gonzalez. Any discussion?
Hold on.
Paula, thank you. Motion to consider case 4I for Paula Gonzalez. Discussion. Motion to approve. Ryan,
Denied.
Rashida, Marcia,
Denied.
Paul,
No.
Andrea, Willie,
Denied.
Sarah, and Carol.
Denied.
Motion failed 8-0. I'm gonna need a little help with this last name. Motion to consider case 4J for Christopher Justricius. Oh, Justricius. Discussion. Okay, motion to approve. Ryan,
I approve.
Rashida. Marcia. Approved. Paula, and Paul. By the end of this, we'll be so
Both of us. Approved.
Motion carries 7 for denied. Motion to consider case 4K for Michael Candula. Discussion? Hearing none. Motion to approve. Brian?
I approve.
Rashida? Please. Marcia?
Approve.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Approved. Willie?
Approved.
Sarah? And Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries with 8 approved. Motion to consider case 4L for Leonard Lackey. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
Deny.
Rashida, Marshall,
Deny.
Paul,
Deny.
Andrea, Willie,
Deny.
Tara, and Carol.
Deny.
Motion fails 8-0. Motion to consider case 4M for Thomas Martin. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
I approve.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul, Andrea, Willie,
Approve.
Tara, and Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries with 5 approvals and 3 denied, correct? Right. Motion to consider case 4N for Daniel McKernan. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
Deny.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Deny.
Andrew, Willie,
Deny.
Tara,
Deny.
and Carol.
Deny.
Motion fails with 8-0. Motion to consider case 4O for Kenneth Novak. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
Deny.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Deny.
Andrea, Willie,
Deny.
Tara,
Deny.
and Carol.
Deny.
Motion fails 8-0. Motion to consider case 4P for James Powell. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
Approve.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, Willie,
Approve.
Tara, Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries 6 with 6 approvals and 2 denied. Motion to consider Laura Maynard, case 4Q for Laura Maynard. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
Deny.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul, Andrea, Willie,
Deny.
Tara, Carol.
Deny.
Motion fails 8-0. Motion to consider case 4R for Deanna Rowe. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
I approve.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, Willie,
Approve.
Tara, Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries 5-3. 5 approvals, 3 denies. Motion to consider case 4S for Antoinette Trapp. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
I approve.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, Willie,
Approve.
Tara, Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries 6 approvals, 2 denials. Motion to consider case 4T for Gina Volber. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
I approve.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, Willie,
Approve.
Tara, Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries with 6 approvals and 2 denials. Motion to consider case 4U for Stacy Wallace. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
I approve.
Rashida, Marcia,
Approve.
Paul, Andrea, Willie,
Approve.
Tara, Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries with 4 approvals, like 8 approvals. Motion to consider case 4B for Stephen Woods. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
I approve.
Rashida, Marcia,
Approve.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, Kara? No, Willie?
Approved.
Kara? Carol?
Approved.
Motion carries with 8 approvals. Motion to consider case 4W for Inez Porter. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Denied.
Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
No.
Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
Kara? Carol?
Denied.
Motion fails with 8 denials. Motion to consider the case 4X for Yvette Bradley. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Approved.
Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Willie?
Approved.
Sarah? Carol?
Approved.
Do we have a tie, right? So so then I have to,
Chair will go to make or break.
okay, I go to deny, so motion fails. 5-4, 5 denials in.
Five.
Five.
Four.
Out of 4 approvals. Thank you. Motion to consider case 4Y for James Brannon. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Approved.
Rashida? Marcia?
Approved.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Willie?
Approved.
Sarah? Carol?
Approved.
Motion carries with 6 approvals and 2 denials. Motion to consider case 4Z for Melvin Bunn Jr. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Approved.
Motion, Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Willie?
Approved.
Sarah? Carol?
Approved.
We have a tie, so chair votes to deny. Motion fails with 5 denials, 4 approvals. Motion to consider case 4AA for Anthony Carter. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian? Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
No.
Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
Sarah?
Denied.
Carol? Motion fails with 8 denials. Motion to consider case 4BB for Michaela Uva. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian? Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
No.
Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
Sarah? Carol? Motion fails with 8 denials. Motion to consider case 4CC for Quentin Hedgepeth. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Approved.
Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Willie?
Approved.
Sarah? Carol?
Approved.
So we have a tie. Chair votes to deny. Motion fails with 5 denials and 4 approvals. Motion to consider case 4DD for Kurian. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Approved.
Rashida? Marcia?
Approved.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Willie?
Approved.
Sarah? Carol?
Approved.
Motion carries with 7 approvals and 1 denial. Motion to consider case 4EE for Darnell Reese. Discussion? Motion to approve. Brian?
Denied.
Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
No.
Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
Sarah? Carol?
No.
Motion fails with 8 denials. Motion to consider case FF for Vance Robinson. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian, Rashida, Marshall,
Approved.
Paul,
Approved.
Andrea, Willie,
Approved.
Sarah,
Approved.
Carol. Motion carries with 7 approvals and 1 denial. Motion to consider case 4GG for Tony Ruffin. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
Approved.
Rashida, Marshall,
Approved.
Paul,
Approved.
Andrea, Willie,
Approved.
Sarah, Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries with 7 approvals and 1 denial. Motion to consider case 4HH for Musa Sakos. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian, Rashida, Martha,
Approved.
Paul, Andrea, Willie,
Approved.
Sarah,
Approved.
Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries with 7 approvals and 1 denial. Motion to consider case 4 from II for Michael Smith. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
Deny.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Deny.
Andrea, Willie,
Deny.
Kara,
Deny.
Carol.
Deny.
Motion fails with 8 denials. That concludes. And then we go. Okay, moving on to.
I'm sorry.
Now we're going to move on to agenda item 5, old business. Motion to consider the case A for Elvis Francis. Discussion. Motion to approve. Brian, Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Deny.
Andrea, Willie,
Deny.
Sarah, Carol.
Oh, deny.
Motion fails with 8 denials. Motion to consider case, it's actually 5A. I'm sorry, the first one is 5A. This is right here. Yeah. Motion to consider 5B for Carleen White. Discussion. Motion to approve, Brian,
Deny.
Rashida, Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
No.
Andrea, Willie, Sarah, Carol.
Deny.
That concludes agenda item 5, old business. Moving on to agenda item 6, new business. Can I make the motion? Yep. Okay, so we're just, the new business is the 4th quarter travel report, which I believe all trustees received. Discussion. Nope. The second item was the NC PERS webinar documentation, I believe all trustees received.
NC PERS annual public retirement system study, key trends and insights. Free webinar, February 25th. Register for that. Provide information. Email. Or just contact the institution.
Okay, so moving on to executive director report.
So I think most of the trustees met her at the seminar that we had, but personnel director and board trustee Katie Jones is here today. Board meeting. Candy, we joined on some of the changes, but I want to come and watch it, and I'll tell you, we designated as police, so. The trustee election RFP is live, should close in about a week or so. The companies that have helped administer elections in the past have contacted us with questions, so you'll reach out to the response to that. Once we get that and set up the timeline, we'll certainly let you know about that. The, concerning the medical panel RFP, we received one response from a company named Leidos, Leidos, they're located out of Ballackinwood. They're a similar umbrella organization where many thousands of them do umbrella. Our task is currently negotiating with some of their fee structure with them. And once that's done, we'll report back to the board to determine when we want to add them to the decide that. Just to remind you, the actuary will make their presentation at next month's board meeting, at February board meeting. And probably one of the 4 weeks here. So we'll get to that. Still, just reminding you, continue to large number of retirements and service characteristics for the application. So we're always looking at this process to see how we can make things more efficient. So, Shanique's doing that, we're doing that. People are moving along pretty quickly in that area. We're also, in conjunction with that, working with the OIT technology experts, anyone filling, looking at ways to enhance technology. We have had strong discussions with OIT tech experts so far, and I think we'll be close to getting something where we can put some ideas together, some concrete ideas together. So that's important. Exciting, how we do have, as you may know, as moved into Elizabeth Bonner spot. We do have Taisha Wilson from the Civil Service Commission starting with us next week to backfill Lisa's spot. So that's good.
Congratulations.
Again, I just want to thank all the trustees for their attendance and participation in the seminar that fiduciary did. Thank Josh for the job of that. I think we're already trying to think of some of the next topics for the seminar. So if you have any ideas, please reach out to Josh or myself. Do that. And just one note, on the vacation, back litigation, the board has been briefed on that issue, and we will keep you posted as that goes back for us. That's it. That's all I had today.
The next item is litigation summary.
The litigation summary speaks for itself. We have about 7 cases and common pleas at the moment.
Any new business? Hearing none, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. We actually have to take a vote on it? Okay, Brian. Marcia.
Approve.
Paul. Andrea. Willie. Tara. Carol. Motion carries, meeting adjourned.
Tell them how many minutes.
Do you guys want to move to different conference or take a break? You want to take a break?
Wow.
Motion. We're starting the deferred comp meeting. Needed a motion? Okay. The first agenda item is approval of the November 25 minutes. Motion to approve. All right.
Second.
Ryan. Francois.
Approved.
Marcia.
Approved.
Paul.
Approved.
Christie. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
Karen. Approved. And Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries 8%. Okay, now I turn it over to Brad Nice, I think, for agenda item 3, so we're looking for, or is it correct? Okay, so now we're moving on to agenda item 3, Q4 2024 mutual fund investment performance update. Number 18.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everybody to be here. We're reporting out the December summary for deferred compensation plan and 401A. So the asset balance at the end of December was $2,078,045,054. That is 2% less than the month of November. Plan participants, 26,578. That's 130 more than the month of November. Participants contributing is 20,237. That is 69 more, and when you look at the folks with account balance, it's about 76% that are actively contributing to the plan. New enrollments, 203 in the month of December, which is phenomenal because it's a tough month to get people to enroll. We want to thank, again, the board trustees, HR, for your engagement and commitment to raise plan awareness, and also Brad Nice and his team for the great job that they do. If you look at year to date for December, for 2024, that was 2,305 new enrollments for the year, which is 22% over 2023. So thank you so much to all of you for this work. The other one thing that just want to highlight is to help support the team with the new enrollments and knows all that is going on with Department of Education. We'll also have a new online experience. So what would take folks 20 minutes to enroll online is now reduced to 10 minutes, which is, again, making things efficient for the participants to enroll and their experience. The 401A plan assets are $4,746,817. That's 3% drop from the month of November. Plan participants is 1,468. It's 5 less due to rollover and transfer out. Parking Authority and Housing Development Authority, there was no new enrollments, so the plan participant count in Parking Authority is 651, and for Housing Development Corporation, it is 47 participants. The Roth participants, which is the after-tax contributions, there are 8,459 participants, which is about 123 more than the month of November. Plan assets are at 86.4 million. The utilization for Roth is at 32% penetration. When we look at the percentage contributions, this is an important part that we've been continuously raising awareness of contributing in percentage contribution. There are now 2,770 participants, which is 92 more than the month of November. When you look at the penetration rate, based on those that are actively contributing, it's 14%. So it's moving the needle, and we'll continue to drive those campaigns to raise awareness of the importance of percentage contribution. Call volumes in the month of December, we did see an increase, which is normal, 3,386 phone calls and 310 more than the month of November. But when we look at the overall year-to-date phone calls that our call center handled, it's 38,559 phone calls, which is, by the way, 4% less than the previous year. online accounts where folks can leverage the tools and webinars and all the other important things to help them be prepared for their retirement readiness. There are 21,091 participants, which is about 94 more than the month of November. And right now, 79% of city participants have an online account. Happy to answer any questions you may have for me. If not, I'm going to pass it on to Brad to talk about the service summary.
Thank you, Dina. Good morning, everyone. So for the month of December, the local service team conducted 183 consultations, resulting in 171 enrollments. There were 13 group events and workshops with 646 total attendees for the month. And just in brief, we're going to do a more in-depth annual plan review for you guys. But just for the year 2024, I just want to highlight that the local team did 286 group events and workshops for the employees, with 9,505 people attending those workshops. And 4,877 of those attendees were attendees to our CFP weekly educational webinars that we do. So that was a very good year in terms of activity for our webinars and group events and workshops. And speaking of groups, events, and workshops, in speaking briefly with Fran, there's some interest in possibly doing a Social Security education session for the trustees, which we're happy to help facilitate and have our CFP, Don Martin, CLO, conduct to, so we can work with Fran and staff on setting up a date for a webinar for the trustees. There's been some recent legislation, I'm sure you've heard about Social Security, and so we can discuss impacts of that. General Social Security.
So there was no movement. You'd be able to do this year?
We
Want to train?
we would be pretty flexible. So whatever works best for the trustees, we can figure that.
You guys have to do this.
We try to get that within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, okay. We can make that happen.
That's your agenda item 3 now.
Just to cover, and good morning, everyone. Just to cover the fourth quarter mutual fund investment performance report. Over both the 3-year and 5-year period, usually 12 of the 22 funds ranked above the median. 18 of the 22 ranked above the median in either the 3 or 5-year period. Not a lot of interpretive recommendations. Do think just continue to monitor Dodge and Cox. They're outperforming over 3 and 5 years, and very, very slightly underperforming over the 1-year period. So we're not recommending a change there. We just also wanted to confirm that the Aerial Appreciation Fund did get replaced in the lineup on December 13th. All assets there were mapped to the mid-cap index. Simultaneously, the U.S. Sustainability Index Fund from Fidelity is added to the lineup. Happy to take questions, but otherwise, pretty benign report. And then to close, just to note that for the fourth agenda item, the money market fund report, 146,791. $146,791 in fund income made up again of participant fees, fee rebates, interest on mutual funds account. Total income for the fourth quarter was a little over $30,000. Assets of the account must be used for exclusive benefit of the participants and defray reasonable expenses. We didn't have any.
think that concludes the agenda for the deferred account portion of today's session. So motion to adjourn. All right. Ryan? Francois? Yes. Paul? Lily? Carol? Marcia? Kara? Christie? And motion carries, meeting adjourned.
You can also scramble it up.
So that's my.
Make sure they're paying attention.
Let me try.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
That happens every month. I'm not very happy with it.
The order, first item is approval of the minutes from the December meeting. There are motions. Approved, properly seconded. Francois, approved. Paul, approved. Brian, Billy, approved. Carol, approved.
Marcia.
Unanimously, I got both these, sorry. Agenda item 2, consideration of the vice chair.
So every year in February, the board is, every year in December, January, I'm sorry, the board is required to take a vote for the board rules on the vice chair, and we'll let Josh do this.
So as you're aware, the Director of Finance is the chair of the board. However, with the rules of the Board of Pensions, the vice chair is to be elected from the membership of the board by the concurrence of at least 5 members of the board as regular meeting in January of each year for a term of 1 year, commencing on February 1st. Section 4 says the vice chairperson shall act as the chairperson in the absence or inability of the chairperson. The chairperson is duly authorized as the alternate. So it's time to vote.
Great. So, any nominee motion?
I would like, I'm a longtime member, and certainly my mentor, Carol Stoops.
I think the
Second, I'll second that.
It has been moved and properly seconded.
Thank you.
What?
I said, thank you.
Sure, well, we have to vote first.
Yeah, no, I'm saying,
Technically, Carol, you need to vote. Any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Approved. Paul? Approved. Brian? Willie? Approved. Christie? I'm gonna say.
Approved.
Karen? Marcia? And Madam Vice Chair?
Approved.
Motion carries. Congratulations on your reelection.
Thank you again.
This is when you usually sing a song for
When they clear the room out.
Agenda item 3 is the local brokerage report.
Thanks, Rob. Fourth quarter, local minority and women brokerage report. As a reminder, fund managers on an aspirational basis are encouraged to fraction direct 35% of their trades annually to qualify local minority firms subject to pricing and best execution. See on the equity side, a strong quarter and a strong year for the program. Fourth quarter, 47% of the trades went to qualifying firms. For the year, 45%. Ariel directed the highest percentage in the fourth quarter at 99%. Most of the managers were either above target or within a few percentage points. I think for the year, the lowest 27%. Time, you can see they're 49% in the fourth quarter. So I think by and large, a strong report, and it's testament to the, you know, the managers executing their aspirational targets. Similar story on the fixed income side, 36% fourth quarter, 32% for the year, 5% of the quarter and the year. I think we also had one manager, Longfellow, that was slightly below 27. They were closer to the target for Q4, 32%. Net life, and it's also a little bit below. If you remember, they started out in those single digits. To rise over time, very close to that aspiration. So in my opinion, we always need to stay in contact with the managers about this strong year for the brokers.
Chris, do you see any fallout as a result of some of the announcements about AEI in terms of the investment growth? I know some of the investment houses have announced that they're keeping with their DEI strategy. I'm not quite sure. I know we like to focus on that for the companies that we select, but I'm thinking long term and for the next 4 years, do you see that affecting us in terms of our investment?
So I haven't seen any, I haven't heard from any managers or any brokers that to date it's been an issue. Certainly something we, you know, talked about a little bit upstairs and kept an eye on. We're constantly reviewing, you know, contracts, even though they're evergreen. Every year. This language is in all of those contracts. I have yet to have a manager, you know, complain about it, object to it, with any legal concerns. If we do, I'll certainly speak with the solicitor's office about it. And, but I haven't seen any adverse or negative feedback.
I think we also gonna have to look at the managers in doubling down, like who they, what you call it, sub investing. So they may not be on the top circle, but they may be down in the sub list. As the investment, and then we may have to look at this really change. Because we still have our policy in check, right? So they still should be following our lead, right? So.
Yes.
Yeah, correct. And that's why I said if I got pushback or staff did, talk to the solicitor's office and report the data.
That's probably early days, but we'll be on the lookout.
Any other questions? Item 4. Starting to go to December report.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, the November, there's a short November report back if you're interested or have questions, but we're gonna focus primarily on the December report, which you can high level, very slight underperformance in December, relative to benchmark, -2.4 versus -2.3. Should have gotten it as
You're on page 25.
yeah, 23 of the spiral. Should have gotten estimates yesterday, and we'll have new estimates on Monday. Seen a strong fiscal year date number Tuesday, just under 6%. Cash weighted regular benchmark. Month to date, slightly behind the benchmark at 1.75%. I know there was questions on a couple of the managers. I spoke to some of the line and we talked about that. Just wanted to highlight a few things that we're keeping an eye on. Margins reference vehicle landscape was also economic.
Yes.
So some of the things that we're keeping a close eye on, probably saw the Fed rate steady yesterday in the range of 4.25 to 4.5%. The European Central Bank actually cut their rates this morning to 2.75. So that was the 4th one. I haven't had a chance to look at the language, the transcript or the press comments.
Are they stating levels of inflation in job growth, or they just took a different approach?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think their economies have generally been slower. You know, they haven't been as expensive. Job growth has been more sluggish. But I'll be kind of on the staff. Interested to see what the head of that she had to say. So, a lot of fallout early this week from whatever's going on with Chinese AI and POC. Sent a couple of things out about that yesterday. I think there's a lot of interest in whether or not that is real. The actual cause, whether they use it. I think there's a lot of speculation that those numbers may not be reacting to them on Monday or Tuesday, but we will see. Still need to get more clarity in the real estate market. We are seeing a little bit of movement from all this. Some people are beginning to buy a little bit more and kind of bring some back in the water there. We'll see how that goes out. Not something I think staff is necessarily ready to recommend, but we are seeing interest in it. We may have 25% of the tariffs on a couple of countries as early as Saturday. So we're obviously keeping an eye on that. Somewhat related, what's going to be the impact of some of the reversing of the changes in energy policies, whether it's clean energy and the tariffs. Tariffs do go up in fact. You could see it spike in gas prices pretty quickly. A lot of anticipation about the possibility of PE transactions off this year, perhaps fuel-friendly debt ceiling again, sometimes Q1 or Q2 budget, and then there's a lot of agreements that are being employed this morning. That's the Microsoft and video. So there's a lot of earnings calls that have listened to transfers. So there's a lot to keep an eye on.
Anything that's going on globally that should have us be looking at our allocation?
I don't think in the immediate term, obviously, we'll revisit it. I know Quaker Name talked about, when I talked to him about the little bit of volatility managers, they're about 4% of the portfolio.
They really one in particular.
Yes. And the issue,
That's Fidelity.
it's Fidelity, and they're going to talk a little bit about that. I just think we have to continue to be cognizant of whether or not some of those traditional defensive sectors are going to continue to operate as they have. Certain banks, insurance companies.
Whether they're still rolled on.
Yeah, if you think about, just to pick one, insurance companies, you look at what Carolina or California, pulled out of some of those markets that are facing potentially once they're still there, huge claims. Again, are they going to continue to behave the same way as they have historically? They might. I'm not suggesting it change. I think that's just something that we continue to look at. I know Quake was also talking about.
It's Dave.
Yeah, but I think in terms of the asset allocation, that's probably where we spend time. Also, we'll be getting our RFP funds in March, so we'll be revisiting where that cash is allocated.
Are we concerned about the new regulation life? And how's the impact on inflation, closing of business, employment? How is that going to affect us? Are we looking at that? Is that, like Rob said, is that going to impact on our asset allocation, our bottom line?
So it could impact the bottom line. I don't know that it'll impact the asset allocation immediately. But yes, depending how long or how deeply the immigration, ICE, roundup or deportations will go. Yes, there will be potentially spillover effect into certain industries, restaurants, construction, agriculture, and that's just to name a few. When you combine that potential effect, which I don't think will be immediate, but it could be reasonably quick. When you combine that with tariffs, yes, there's the real possibility that could become inflationary in the short to medium term. And I think that's part of the reason why you saw the Fed yesterday. Not only did they not cut rates, but I think the language was very much of a relief. I do think they're worried about inflation spiking again for a variety of reasons, including that. And if that were to happen, then yeah, I would think by the year, certainly August, we would have to think about whether to call for some tweaks to the asset allocation.
Chris, just to add to that, so on page 17, this is before tab 1, it's the very front of the book. Page 17 has a summary table that talks about the new administration, potential impact, some of the policies they have on the economy. So as Chris mentioned, you'll see around immigration, the impact on growth, that's expected to be negative when you think about the short-term effect. The impact on inflation neutral to an increased amount of inflation, the deficit neutral. But if we think about some of the other things being rolled out at a pretty quick pace by the new administration, we get a clear sense that look, some things are going to be inflationary, some things may be deflationary, and kind of the backdrop to the conversation around low vol. Defensive portions of the portfolio, we do anticipate more volatility going forward. If we think about the last Trump administration, while the market did go up, on any given day, we saw tremendous sell-offs, we saw the market go sideways. So we do think that having low volatility in the portfolio definitely makes sense, but I think the question is not on the asset class, but more on the manager fidelity.
Is it really low vol?
Right. So in the last 2 years, they have missed the benchmark. Over longer periods, we will see, as the irony of when a manager is selected, that longer term numbers do support a track record where they have been able to beat the benchmark and they have been able to hold up on and provide some downside protection. But since coming into the portfolio, they have missed the mark. They in 2023, they were up, but they were behind the benchmark a little bit. Last year, they were behind the benchmark a little bit, and some of that tilts within the portfolio. Stock selection did
Change
not
their
help.
approach at all in the last couple of years? Is there some, what's the reason that they would have made that success before?
I mean, Dave and I were talking about this yesterday. I'll kick it to you real quick regarding the market, back-to-back strong returns, global vol. So I'll pivot to Dave really quickly, so I don't go down the rabbit hole and then jump in. But
Yeah. And before we get started, we would just like to take the time to say, go Birds.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
So this is from the market environment on slide 46, same section Quinn referred to. And Rob, to your point, and one of the big phenomena we have really seen over the last 40 years, we haven't seen since the 1970s. This chart goes back to 1990. Is the concentration of just the top 10 names, and that orange line starts to spike in 2020. So there's just a handful of names that are driving return. The caps at the top 10 positions fuel 60% of returns. Only 30% of stocks vested in the index for the rest of the year. We have those market exposures through most of the portfolio, especially through our index managers, and that is really what's driving return. If we see an unwinding of this concentration risk, which will probably come at some point because this is unsustainable, managers like Fidelity and global managers will help protect because we don't hold those concentrations. So while that performance is disappointing. It is a critical part of the diversification strategy that helps prevent against this level of concentration risk we haven't seen in 50 or 60 years.
One of the things that stood out or troubled us as we're looking through it, even on the downside, they were seeing the market. They didn't get it on the upside because that makes sense given what we want them to do. But when they're not getting the protection on the downside, that's what.
Totally understand. And the downside we've seen really in 2022 was an abrupt sell-off in equities and fixed income. So inflation or interest rate sensitive stocks also sold off when we saw the highest spike in interest rates in decades. So we need to evaluate really what's happened in a very small window. When we underwrote the manager, we looked at a much longer time horizon, and our experience has really only been 2 years. We need to remind ourselves of why we underwrote this manager, what role they have in the portfolio, and what we expect them to do during those market cycles, because we haven't seen those market cycles in that small window that we've already had.
So at what point would you say, yeah, you guys are right, or they're not doing it?
I think if we saw a more persistent sell-off in equities that were not attributable to a massive spike in inflation that we hadn't seen in 40 years, and then a massive increase in interest rates, so a more persistent sell-off, if they're not performing the way we would expect in an environment like that, that's when we start to ask the question.
So if they continue to perform the way they've been performing this year, right, because there hasn't been that massive spike this year, and it's still this year.
Yeah, but let's reflect on what we're getting from the rest of the portfolio, which is a massive amount of upside and concentration risk. If we see these top 10 names sell off, and we get a slight taste of that in DTC, which, I think there's a lot of data and a lot of investigating, but it definitely exposes some of the vulnerabilities that those top 10 names, consumed by AI have. If there's decoupling, if there's a sell-off, that will present a problem for the rest of the portfolio.
I'm not arguing against diversifying.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at this particular manager.
So, yeah, we would say the next step, kind of to Chris's point, would be to do a deeper dive evaluation on Fidelity. So the next 8 to 12 weeks, assess how the first quarter is going, volatile days, and then ultimately what Fidelity's positioning is in the portfolio, the environments where they clearly stated they expect to outperform, the environments that they expect not to do well, and then really holding to that in light of what they just mentioned, the very concentrated scrutiny of the market has been in. Perhaps isn't the best way to assess Fidelity over the short period of time, but what we are going to do is that deeper dive that really just lays out going forward. These are the clear things we expect, and then if these things do not happen, we can then be worried. But at this point, given everything described, we're not, materially concerned. It's disappointed, but we're not materially concerned, just given the fact that, they've had some bad picks, but in the grand scheme of things, in the bigger picture, they have been able to navigate quite a few different markets.
The control actual timeline, what's the timeline?
Oh, so we just mentioned around 8 to 12 weeks.
Quickly. This month, right?
Yeah, 2 to 3 months.
So March is the end of the first quarter, we should know solid, I think, right?
I'd say,
That's for the analysis, right? Preparing the analysis.
yeah. So I'd say around the end of the first quarter going into the second quarter, that's the goal for the analysis. And that's really in line with what we've done with other managers, whether it's the international small cap or other strategies. It just allows us to collect data at this point, early part of the year, with respect to the policy and, its impact on the economy. It just gives us an opportunity to collect, some additional data points and points to monitor them on. So again, 2 to 3 months, in our opinion, that seems very reasonable.
When we're looking at that, doing the analysis, when you look at the global, I'll call it broad minimum volatility, that's the benchmark, right?
Okay, so
13, yeah, and 31. Just pick that data. You see that best little volatility going back to what that you see. And you see Fidelity volatility. So when you do your analysis, you can see that low vol benchmark throughout a period of time. In numerous cycles, right, not different cycles. And then, like, if you look here, I know it's a short period of time, but the Fidelity does not give the same downside protection that MFS seems to give. Nor does that the same upside that MFS seems to give. So MFS, I don't know what they call it, first principle, but you know, not giving us the same upside, but also not protecting us to the extent that MFS is giving downside. And maybe you could break that out into a longer period of time to get us to 2 years, to give us a comparison. So I think what kind of what Rob was saying is we're not comparing, we're not criticizing the diversification theory and using global low vol as an instrument for that diversification. I think what we're really looking at is Fidelity versus other options versus specifically MFS vehicle that we're using because it doesn't seem to be protected as well on the downside. In the world on the upside, it's the same benefit. So I think that's kind of the analysis that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think just an example, we talked, a couple of us talked about this a little bit, you know, in the fourth quarter, they basically were in line with the benchmark for financial stocks, right? They were almost even with the benchmark in terms of their weighting of financials. Financials in that quarter actually did do a really nice job. They were up 4%. The problem was one of the problems was the financials and Fidelity's stocks that in their basket actually lost 23%. So they had a good weighting in terms of how much financial exposure. They did a poor job at considering that time period when the financials became a lot. And I think to Carol's question, Rob said controller asked Brand's point. I think that's the concern. You know, are they doing what they're supposed to do? And that's what we'll come back with additional analysis and certainly staff to contribute to that. Thank you.
Anything else on the report?
Well, Michael, I want to go back to the macro analysis. Sure. 401, which is page 5 specifically. One of the recent circulating something the other day is that I know in December, there was Vanguard's outlook for the markets 2025, actually. And it was largely negative, especially for U.S. equities, specifically in the large cap space and the growth space. And the analysts that they gave were a little bit different than we're seeing here. For example, on page 5 with large cap equities, mid cap equities, growth, you're giving a neutral rate. I would think, and Chris, you can jump in on this category. I would say the Vanguard report would put that under headwinds. So, not to compare Vanguard, you probably read that. But I'm just wondering, there doesn't seem to be a lot of headwinds right now concerning, especially growth. But can you kind of explain this maybe for the explain that?
Yeah, sure.
Why do we think there are neutral as opposed to headwinds?
Yes, so I would say when we think about what's going on in the market right now, there's a lot of conflicting data points right being thrown at us. So here's an example. The term MAGA used to mean one thing, right? Inauguration has now been changed to Meta, Apple, Google, and Amazon, right? All of those stocks represent the growth sector. So while we're seeing, and I think the parallel here would be what we might do from the dot-com, where you're going to see winners and losers. And we think about the moderation theory and those that kind of have access to power, access to where the administration wants to go. I think that's an element of those stocks winning the day, but then there will be losers in the growth category. So that kind of neutralizes the overall effect. When you think about your Teslas are gonna most likely do well, the SpaceX is most likely going to do well, your Metas are most likely going to do well. But then on the flip side, your Yahoos and so on, they're really not going to do as well. So I think that's where it's more of a neutral stance because we still see some clear winners at the end of the day. I would say with Vanguard, they do have some active component to their strategies, but because they're a passive shop and it's beta exposure, kind of to Dave's point earlier, when you think about the concentration of the market and if you're an index provider, that's also going to be looked at from a glass half empty standpoint versus half full. If you have active managers that are making those decisive bets and not just waiting for the index to reconstitute between winners and losers. So
that was my next question. Is it, I mean, indexing versus active? Chris talked a little bit about Fidelity, a little loan bond, and that despite the fact that banks did well, their selection, financial institutions did well. Their selection of financial institutions wasn't very good in comparison. So now we're back to selecting the active managers that pick the right stocks versus the index. So would you say the index has evidence against it? Is that kind of what
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, the index, if we think about the concentration, 2 back-to-back years of consecutive returns, which we haven't seen, in close to a century, that does point to the index as being overvalued and a big reconstitution of the index. So
that would include the S&P also.
Absolutely.
They seem to follow closer to this NASDAQ versus
Yes.
Dow.
Absolutely, yes.
We look at that also. We'll get to that, obviously, asset allocation, we'll get to that, but, we have too much exposure to just the blind index versus selection. I mean, it's a tough call.
It's a tough one because I would say that we do have a healthy amount of index exposure, but then we balance that out with a healthy amount of private market exposure. So there's a lot of active management in the portfolio in the areas that should more than offset what the liquid markets do in the short term. So
It's very intentional about where we and index.
Right.
We talk about this internally a lot, right? I mean, trustees, Christian staff, this is that. We've had such good gains in that area.
Right.
You want to pair some of those gains off the table. Chris mentions that all the time. I'm not suggesting that, just throwing it out. It's always something that we're discussing on an ongoing basis.
Correct.
Especially with the lofty valuations that
Correct.
we're looking at now.
And at least to kind of get that closer to our actual allocation, right? Because equity has gone up so fast.
We actually, and this is a really good dovetail to the asset allocation. We actually did that in the last iteration where we brought it down a little bit, increased fixed income a little bit for that very reason. So I don't think we're going to change course from that because as we've continued to make gains, as the discount rate has continued to drop, we look to steadily just kind of lock some of those gains away. And low vol from a diversification standpoint, one of the reasons that was introduced to the portfolios was the very fact that fixed income wasn't yielding, fixed income was extremely volatile. The risk to reward wasn't really there. We recognized that for traditional equities, a lot of expensive valuations. So making sure that we took some of the data off the table is also part of that strategy. So I'd say that we will continue to be conservative as we continue to see strong performance. We'll continue to ratchet down and lock in those gains. Whether it's fixed income or another conservative asset class that has less beta or correlation with the traditional markets.
Yeah, I think it's a sound plan that the board adopted.
Yes.
Work. I agree with that. It's not just, it's the execution.
That's,
Yeah.
yes.
The execution.
Yes.
That's the execution. Are we executing consistent with the good?
Yes.
That's really.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the plan reinforces the concerns you brought up, Fran, in terms of are we taking risk table, and then with the active managers, you nailed it by hiring an active manager doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be like that. So even though, on the paper, there should be an environment where active management, because some folks may love that undervalued stuff a little bit too much. Some folks may like that overpriced stuff a little bit too much, and just finding that right mix to the manager that hold on or sell at the right time. And still having a balance of that passive exposure to the active exposure makes sense for that reason.
Yeah, is it going to the right 10-year period where the emerging markets are going to move up here?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Who knows?
Exactly. Yep.
I think France, and she brought up the topic of valuation. The first group to look at slide 63. It illustrates the valuation across US and non-US. It's the same section 63.
The left evaluation.
Lower, yeah. And is evidenced by that blue bar at the bottom, S&P 500 is very rich compared to the rest of the world. Simply because those valuations are rich doesn't necessarily suggest that our growth, our innovation, our capital flow will become inferior to what we see across the rest of the globe. Developed market Europe is mired in regulation and is stifling growth. That level of innovation is just not rewarded at. Now, although we do see elements of conversion, but simply because valuations are rich doesn't suggest that that will immediately unwind. We need to be conscientious of this, but we shouldn't look at this valuation alone. We need to recognize that we have an economy of innovation that rewards capital by flowing to areas of good ideas.
The way to put it, this is an indicator that we should at least be monitoring this.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, you're back to look at.
And one of the things that we look at again, is that allocation of US and non-US equity. And when we evaluate over the last 30, 40, 50 years, that optimal value, that optimal allocation between US and non-US equity ranges from 70-30 to 60-40. And we want to be somewhere in there. We don't know when this will decouple. One of the key drivers of that mean reversion is the strength of the US dollar. We have a very strong dollar relative to the rest of the non-US currencies. We don't see that necessarily unwinding, but as Quinn pointed out with that chart, there is a lot of policy uncertainty that could disrupt the value of that dollar, and we would expect maybe some reversion back here. So a thoughtful asset allocation, visiting regularly, is the best recipe for protecting the portfolio.
And ironically, the trade war will likely strengthen the dollar, just because you have a trade war, it destabilizes trade, people buy the most stable currency, demand for the dollar goes up and the dollar appreciates. So that's another example of just, I think, unintended consequences of something that's jingoistic and sounds good, but then the reality, achieve the outcome that was anticipated. The other thing around valuations, I think, Fran, you brought this up, it was around a year ago when we were talking about PE ratios. Following the global financial crisis, the US equity market has consistently been overvalued relative to the international market. So this is a discussion I think we've had for over a decade, and it brings to the end of having PE ratios as a dashboard, but also recognizing that the new normal for PE, the same way prices are inflationary, we're not going to go back to house prices of the 70s. PE ratios may have reset, but no one's going to put their neck on the line and say, well, this is the new normal for PE ratio.
It's like the inverted yield curve. It doesn't mean where you stand.
Yes, exactly.
If the dollar keeps strengthening, Rob's finally going to have to be landing. Let me head up the satellite office in Rome.
So we have our meeting for vote now. Anything else on the investment report? Thank you. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Yep, there's a few quick announcements. First, I wanted to introduce the new investment officer. Started a few weeks ago. He interned with us a couple times. And, really good, applied. We're happy to have him. Temple grad. Also local high school in the city. So One other announcement, I know Carol and I talked about this briefly. We have 2 RFPs that have been closed. We have the private markets consultant. We're on a timeline of bringing those folks to the table probably in March. And then we have the domestic equity index RFP. That's also closed. We're evaluating responses there. We're looking at March or April just to close securities lending, we have 135 adopted for the month, well more than 55 million since the program. Slight uptick in reverse AUM, local managers 62.5%, reverse managers of home group 55.14%, and Philadelphia and surrounding counties 1.8%. And then the next 3 meetings, bring commission to actuarial meeting next month, February 27th, and March 27th.
Call the board. Is there a motion to adopt the investigation? It's seconded. Francois, approved. Paul, approved. Stein, Billy, approved. Carol, approved. Marcia, approved. All right. Carries to all, new business. And it was also your turn. Thank you all very much. See you at this meeting.
All right.